Hello and welcome to episode number 37 of The Pitcher or the Hitter, the podcast by the M-SABR Dynasty League for the M-SABR Dynasty League. I am Cam.
I'm Sahil.
And Wander Franco just hit his first career home run.
Yeah. What a debut he's having. I was kind of expecting it to be like a solid debut, but maybe not like this like elite debut that he's having. He had the walk to start the game. He came back down to 0-2 to walk. And I watched that at bat. Those were some really good takes he had. And then he's got the homer. He is mortal though. He did make it out, but great debut for Wander Franco so far. And it's a 5-5 game. Dare I say maybe he hits the walk-off home run?
Yeah, man. You could call your shot right now. The episode will be out after the game is over. Of course, people will know exactly what happens. But yeah, he's been the hero so far. Yeah, that first at bat, a couple really close pitches outside that he took very well. He's shorter than I thought he was. He's not a tall guy.
No, he really isn't. But man, can he play? And you know what? I am going to call my shot. Wander Franco is going to hit a walk-off home run.
Ooh, all right.
You could put that down.
All right, I will. And yeah, this is just the most anticipated debut in a very long time. I can't remember since Strasburg a debut being more hyped than this one.
Strasburg was the last debut I could think of being that hyped. I remember watching the Nationals game that day over the Orioles game. They're carrying them both on Masson because I wanted to see Strasburg pitch. So I think that's the last one that matches it in terms of hype.
Yeah, Ohtani had a lot of hype. And I guess trying to remember some pitchers had some hype behind them, but I can't think of anything like Wander.
Chris Bryant had some hype behind him.
Chris Bryant had a lot of hype behind him. That's true. Bryce Harper, of course, had a ton of hype, but the individual game where Strasburg debuted, there's nothing on that until this.
Oh no, I am 100% with you there.
Yeah. But yeah, so this episode we're going to talk and finally give our power rankings. We've been talking about it for a little while, preparing to do something, but now is finally the time. And speaking of Wander and his debut, we are only choosing to look at things that happened during the first 11 weeks, as that is one matchup per team against every team.
Yeah, we all knew at the end of that 11 weeks that Wander was going to come up for this week. So we will be talking with the knowledge that Wander came up, but we are not going to let his performance tonight impact where we place each team, specifically Eric's team.
Exactly, and we're not going to let the fact that you're currently losing 8-0-4 to Bo with the Flow. We're not going to let that cloud our judgment either.
Yeah, their ERA is very bad, so I'll be fine. One quick thing I will say is Sully did post in the chat that Wade LeBlanc is in for the Cardinals. So a fun shout out to all of our Gallardo Club fans here. Wade LeBlanc is a key member, having pitched for the Mariners and the Orioles, and what other teams does Wade LeBlanc pitch for? There's got to be some good ones.
Was he a Padre?
He was a Padre. He's with the Marlins. He's with Houston. He was with the Angels. He was with the Yankees for a game. He was with the Pirates. The Mariners, obviously.
And I don't think I knew any of these except for Padres, Mariners, Marlins. He has bounced around a ton. Padres, Mariners, Orioles, excuse me.
Yeah, he's played for 9 teams.
God. He's pitched for 3 teams for 6 1/3 innings or fewer.
Yep. But that's the way it goes. The life of a journeyman and the life of a member of the Gallardo Club.
Yeah. Well, he hasn't pitched for the Reds yet, so he's not a full Gallardo.
Not a full Gallardo, but he's like a 2/3 Gallardo. So he
Yeah.
he's going to work his way there. The Cardinals will trade him to the Reds at the deadline because they recognize how important it is to complete the Gallardo chain.
Yeah, not to mention the Reds could use any sort of relief pitcher.
At least TJ Antone came back today.
He did.
He did.
All right. So yeah, want to explain how we're doing the power rankings?
Yeah, so we're gonna go 12 to 1. One of us is gonna give our 12, and then the other one of us is gonna give our 12, then the same thing with 11, so on and so on. We're going to very briefly talk about each team when we go through them, and after every fourth team, we're going to do kind of a little bit of a broader discussion. So after 9, after 5, and after 1, we're going to kind of have a broader discussion about the teams in that group because as we recognize, the teams kind of in the 9 to 12 range have very different circumstances and different things to talk about than the teams that are competing for the top couple seeds. So that's how we're going to proceed. Cam, would you like to start with your number 12 or should I start with my number 12?
I'll start with number 12.
Yep.
And my number 12 team is drumroll please, the Fighting Bellies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this team has currently got the second worst record in the league. They haven't been setting their lineups for the better part of the last few weeks, and they have been playing decently well lately, but they are near the bottom in a lot of categories. Like, for example, they're second to last in home runs, last in RBIs. They do have a good on base percentage, so that is good for them, but near the bottom in just about every pitching category as well. And I just think they're playing like the worst team, and I expect them to have the worst record in the league at the end.
Interesting. That is not who I picked to be the last team. My number 12 pick was Yuki's team. Yuki has the worst record in the league. And I mean, I think part of it is some bad luck. I think he's played a bit better than his 1-9-1 record would indicate. But there's just not a lot I like about this team. Like, Real Muto's a nice piece. Austin Riley is low-key been really good. But, like, Brandon Lau's been a disappointment. There's not really much in the pitching staff beyond Clayton Kershaw and Ian Anderson. Like, Kenta Maeda's been struggling. So, and there's not a lot in terms of, like, reinforcements coming from the farm. I just think top to bottom right now, I just think this is the worst constructed team in the league, and I'm not that optimistic about Yuki's chances moving forward.
Yep. And my number 11 team is Moneyball, Yuki's team. They're 1-9-1. They are a game and a half back of the team with the second worst record. And I think personally, even though they are playing a little better, they have had some tough luck losses. They did just tie this week against a team that's currently in 7th place. They've had some tough luck losses. Looking at their roto, it's a little bit better, and I think eventually they're not going to. I'm kind of thinking of my power rankings as what I expect the standings to be at the end of the year, kind of taking into heavy account what's happened so far, but also how well the teams are playing and how I expect them to finish up, keeping that in context. And I think Yuki is a good enough team to kind of pass one other team, but I think their team is poorly constructed.
Yeah. One piece of advice I'd give: dump some of the catchers, or like all of the catchers. Just no more catchers. No. So my number 11 team was Andrew. I think Andrew's done a fantastic job being in seventh place, and maybe he's going to finish better. But I think like Cam, I think where I think teams are going to finish at the end is important. But for me, when I'm constructing these power rankings, I'm also taking into account who has the better team, how I realistically think that they're going to do the rest of the season, and just kind of the quality of their players. Andrew got off to a pretty solid start with a couple of guys that he has traded away recently, notably Marcus Stroman, who I actually think left today's game with an injury. So it'd be interesting to see what happened there. Randall Gritchick was really good for him. He traded him away. Andrew Chafin, Kevin Gosman's gone. I think he's overperformed this year. I think he has a bright future ahead of him. But for now, I have a hard time justifying putting him higher than 11.
Okay. So my number 10 team is Benintendi's Chicken Tendies. They're currently 3-7-1. They have hit a little bit of a hot streak. They did beat Connor. They played me well. They beat Eric recently. But I think on the whole, they are a rebuilding team. They've torn down and built up a mighty farm system, but I don't really see them going anywhere this year. They have a lot of pitchers beating, like a couple other teams, they're beating people with volume, but not too many of them are people I particularly like. Sammy Long has, I guess, got a low whip, but I'm not expecting him to be a long-term piece. Adbert Alzolay, I don't have any faith in either. And I think number 10 is a good spot for this team, given what they've done so far.
All right. Well, I have Daniel and Alex at number 10. I think for a lot of the reasons that you did, they're just not consistently checking. In fact, I think they might have potentially, I'd have to double check here. But they might have come close to costing themselves a win last week. Instead, they got the tie with some of the decisions that they made. And it sucks because I think this is a talented team. You know, they picked up Cedric Mullins. They got Cody Bellinger, although he's been kind of hurt for a good chunk of the year. Mark Canha, I think, is one of the most underrated players in baseball. But, I mean, if they're just not going to be active, it's, you know, they're not really going to be a relevant team. But the reason I put them above Andrew and Yuki is because I think this team has just a little more talent that, you know, kind of justifies placing them at number 10.
Yeah, I agree. They're a talented team. I just haven't seen the results from them, and I don't see them doing anything down the stretch. My number 9 team is Andrew. Very exciting to see him at number 9 in this. He's currently just 3 games out of first place in the division. He is 1.5 games out of a playoff spot. He's been playing well. I think he's earned the 9 seed. I still don't think his roster is amazing, but he's built a decent cushion for himself over some of the bottom teams in the league, and I think that has earned some praise.
Yeah, before we get into the next, or my number 9, a little bit of breaking news here.
Oh.
The Reds have signed Malik Smith.
All right.
Not what you thought. You thought I was coming in with a Wander update.
I thought you were coming in with a trade.
No, but Wander did hit a double in his last at bat. So he is now no, he's only got 2 hits on the night. Okay, because his other one was a walk.
Yeah.
So he now has a 3-run homer, a double, and a walk.
God, but no walk-off homer yet.
No. But good for
Alex Smith.
good for
I mean,
Alex.
Yes. I don't know if he's going to play in the majors or anything, but Scott Heineman in center field clearly did not work out. They sent him down to the minors. And with Nick Senzel injured, maybe he will get a start or 2 in center field. Who knows?
Yeah, remember when Malik Smith was like fantasy relevant in this league?
Ouch. Yeah.
There was a time. Hard to believe now, but there was a time. Uh the Reds, to make move for Malik Smith, cut another player who was on rosters for a little bit. He might have been on your roster, Dwight Smith Jr.
He was never on my roster, and I did
Okay.
not. And I remember Dwight Smith Jr. He hasn't played in the majors this year, but he was on their spring training roster, and I totally forgot about him.
Yep. Well, um, there's our mid power rankings interruption because Malik Smith is really important.
All
Um,
right, that is big news.
that is big news. I'm glad I interrupted us. Anyways, my number 19 is Alex and Zach. And I think I'm a little bit higher on them than you are because I really like their pitching staff. It's young, it's exciting. They have Fromber, who's been great. Freddie Peralta has been fantastic. I haven't heard anybody talk about Freddie Peralta because of Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff. But he's 104 strikeouts on the season and a 2.28 ERA with a 0.87 WHIP. That's fantastic out of the rotation. Um, Julio Urias is having a very good year. Ryan Weathers has been okay when called upon. Just not really getting that deep into games quite yet. Casey Mize has been very good, especially over his last few starts. I know he struggled a bit at the beginning of the year, but he's been on recently. Robbie Ray has been surprisingly good this year. Um, and Austin Gomber. Who would have thought Austin Gomber would be good? But he was solid, although he just landed on the IL. So, and while I'm not really a fan of this offense like at all, there is just enough talent there for it, to be passable. So it kind of reminds me of like a poor man's version of Ruth Vick's team. And I think they're number 9. And I will say the one stat I did point out when we recorded yesterday, they have not only once in the past, only once in the past 7 weeks have they won fewer than 5 categories in a week. And that, again, this is against good teams like Eric and Ruthvik and EBO and you and Connor. So, and they beat Eric, Ruthvik, and Nick and Connor. So I think I'm justified putting them at number 9.
All right. So yeah, I think so. We'll take a break here and just kind of show that there is kind of clearly a tier break here after 9. We both had the same 4 teams in those bottom 4 spots. I feel like they kind of are in the same league. There's a bit of a gap above them, wouldn't you say?
I'd say so. I do think that this is a mix of teams, though, kind of going in varying directions. I think that Andrew and Alex and Zach are more on the rise. I think that while they are ranked low, I think there's a lot of reason to be optimistic about their teams. And I think that there's a little less reason for optimism with Yuki and for Daniel and Alex's team, as long as Daniel and Alex continue to be a bit more on the inactive side. But it's an interesting group of teams for sure.
It is, yeah. Kind of interesting that none of us had, or that we didn't have any of the 4 teams in the same spot, both of us, but we still have the same 4 teams in our bottom 4. But yeah, they're clearly the bottom 4, but there's a lot of upside for the future, especially with Alex and Zach's team. There's a lot to look forward to for next year.
Oh, absolutely. It's going to be interesting watching these teams moving forward.
Yeah. And moving on to number 8, I put EBO. They're currently down at 2-5-4, giving them that would be the 9th seed currently. And I don't know what the future holds for this team. They're getting a new owner at some point. We don't know when, we don't know who, and we don't know how involved Zenimax will be until the end of the year. And there's so much talent on this team, but it just hasn't come together for them. And part of that has been bad luck and hard luck losses, but either way, they've dug themselves a really big hole, and it's going to be a real struggle for them to get out of it. And I think it's going to be very hard for them.
Yeah, I did not have them at number 8. I had Clayton and Jake at number 8. For the simple reason that they look like that they're trying to clearly take a step back with trading Lynn, with trading Granke, with trading Eflin. So despite the fact that they went out and got Machado, so I just I think they have a solid team. I actually liked a lot of the moves that they made, looking kind of more towards the future. But at the same time, I just don't think that the way their team is constructed right now, they're realistically going to overtake one of the current playoff teams. Like, I could see it. It wouldn't totally surprise me, but I just think kind of the mindset that they have in the direction is going to kind of bring them more down towards like 8 rather than 6. So that's why I have Jake and Clayton at 8, and that is now 5 picks where we have not agreed.
Mm-hmm. And we're about to make it 6 picks because my next team, my pick at number 7 is Jake's team, Jake and Clayton. They're 4, 6, and 1. They've kind of they're on a little bit of a hot streak. They've won 2 straight now, putting themselves not far outside of a playoff spot. And I think, they are taking a step back, but they're kind of playing it down the middle in a way, it feels like, since they did trade for Machado. And I still think that the pitching, kind of like Alex's team, has a lot of volume, but not a lot of depth. And I really don't know if I'd be comfortable calling them a playoff team, but I think they are the first team out, and it wouldn't shock me if they overtook that 6th seed.
Yeah, so my 7th team is EBO. And I just think kind of what you said earlier, EBO just has the talent where I think that they're going to be able to eventually pull some stuff off. I mean, they lost last week, but I mean, they had 62 RBIs. Like, the offense is starting to come around a bit, I feel like. And their reliever strategy has been, for the most part, pretty effective. I think it could be a bit better, but for the most part, I think they're doing fine there. I think they've just had some real bad luck, and I like to think that things are going to get a little better for them. And while I don't think they're going to make significant additions that are really going to raise their upside for this year and hand them a championship potentially, I think that with what they have right now, they could be a playoff team. Like, I think that they have a roster that's probably in the top half of the league, but their record and the way they've been playing just has not shown it. So I think I'm still maybe a bit more optimistic on their chances of bouncing back than you are, hence me ranking them at 7 and you ranking them at 8. But if there's one thing I've learned as well, it's never count EBO out. They're always going to figure it out somehow. So I have EBO at 7.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I'm not necessarily saying that they don't have the talent. I think just that they're a little too far behind at this point. But at number 6, I have Connor, the Off-White Sox. I agonized over this one a little bit in the order of 6 and 7, but I thought Connor's team is currently holding down the 4 seed. They have a 2.5 game lead over 7th. So I really think I wouldn't say they've got a playoff spot locked up, but it would certainly take a lot to drop them out of that. And I wouldn't say they've played particularly well. If just in terms of they've gotten a little lucky with the teams they've played having bad weeks. and they did just lose to the Chicken Tendies. But overall, I think I can certainly see this team as a playoff team, and I would bet that they do make the playoffs.
Yeah, this is the first time we have consensus here. I also had Connor at 6 for a lot of the same reasons that you do. I don't think they've been playing particularly well. I mean, I think he's like Connor, and Connor's team has been a lot better. And I think that they've had their moments this year, i.e., the week they like shattered the ERA and WHIP records, right? But I think I mentioned this on the last podcast. I just don't think they've been consistent enough in any of these categories for me to really like have a lot of confidence in Connor's team this year. I think the future is very bright for this team. I've said for a while, I still think it's a year too early. I think fortunately for them, some of the other teams around them are either intentionally trying to take a step back or they're just not performing well, i.e. Jake and Clayton and EBO, where I think that even though I still think Connor's a year away, I think that he's going to back himself into a playoff spot, especially with kind of his record over the first 11 weeks. So a lot to like about this team. They made some interesting reinforcements, getting Stroman and Miley and Gibson, Grichuk, Chafin, Hansel Robles, Jeremy Mercedes at the summer meetings, but not enough for me to kind of raise them beyond number 6 at the moment. Because I do think that the kind of grouping of 4 to 6 is kind of close in some regards.
Mm-hmm. Here's a fun fact. Connor is the only remaining owner from the original draft night who has not made the playoffs. And if his team does make the playoffs this year, that'll be 10 of the 12 franchises having played in the playoffs in one of the first 4 years. Do you know the 2 that haven't?
Oh, definitely has to be Andrew's team. So AJ and Max before him. And then let's see, Yuki's team has, I don't think the Bellies have.
You are correct.
Yeah, wow. So just the Bellies and Andrew's team. Okay.
Yeah. And moving on to number 5, I put Ruth Vic and Nick's team, the Deep Sea Devers. I think this team looked super hot to start the year. Ruth Vic had his finals and slacked off, and the team fell off a bit, and they haven't fully recovered even after Ruth Vic's more active. Part of that is injuries. They are currently holding on to the 6th seed. I think they're a little bit better than their record, but I think the top few teams are still really good.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I also have Ruth Vic and Nick at 5. It did maybe kind of, I wouldn't say alarm me, but like I did not see them trading away Tyler Mahle. It did to me signal a little bit of maybe they're going to take a little bit of a step back and retool. And I think up until maybe like a week or 2 ago, I had them as the 4th best team kind of by default, just because I thought they had the 4th best roster. But just given the direction that they're trying to head in, I'm a little unsure now. I still think this is a very solid roster and they're going to make the playoffs. I just don't necessarily think they had the ceiling that they did last year when they were in the semis and came really close to making it to the finals and potentially winning it all. I just I don't see that this year for them, but that doesn't mean they're a bad team at all. I just think that number 5 is a more appropriate rank for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, let's pause one more time to talk about those 5 through 8 rankings.
Yeah. So again, we had the same teams, and we differed with the order of EBO and Clayton and Jake, but we had a consensus of 6 and 5. I feel like both of our analysis on all 4 of these teams were pretty similar. Except I think I have a bit more confidence in EBO. But yeah, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, so I think this doesn't quite correspond to tiers as well as the previous group of four. I would say Connor's team, Clayton and Jake's team, and EBO are kind of a tier in and of themselves, and maybe Ruthvik's team and the team I have at number four are kind of a tier of themselves. Maybe I went back and forth on that a little bit, but it was still good to see us kind of come to a consensus as to this grouping.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I do think that there was a tier break after 6, and then there's a tier break um, after 3. So the team we're about to talk about at number 4 would definitely be included in our discussion of kind of, Connor and Ruthvik and Nick's team. Um, you want to jump into that now, or anything else you want to say here?
Yeah, let's do it. So at number four, I'm assuming we have the same team, and that is Team Resnick.
Yep.
They have hit a little bit of a slump, but they're currently 6-4-1, half a game ahead of the Deep Sea Devers. And unlike that team, they are trying to buy in. They haven't made a ton of big moves per se, but they did acquire Kevin Gosman. That was their
I'd
big
say that's a
pitching.
big move.
I guess, yeah, Gosman's been good this year.
He's been like,
But I guess that was the only big move they've made. They haven't really followed that up with anything at the winter meetings, and I think they still are one of the best teams in the league. They're looking like they could compete for that 4 or 5 seed.
yeah, I think so too. I think that I could have justified putting either Ruthvik and Nick or Anthony's team here. And kind of as I alluded to earlier, the reason I put Anthony at 4 and Ruthvik and Nick at 5 is kind of what happened at the summer meetings. I think that while Anthony is trying to improve, Ruthvik and Nick are maybe trying to take a little bit of a step back, um, which may be smart for them in the long run, but might not necessarily be the thing that helps them this season. So, I think Anthony's team is going to get a bit better once Trout gets back as well. I don't think this is the last move he's going to make getting Kevin Gosman. I think he's due for another move or two. So part of this ranking for me is also kind of based on the assumption that Anthony's going to do a bit more. But even if he didn't, I just feel like this is a safe pick for number 4. I think Anthony has a higher floor but a lower ceiling than Ruthvik and Nick. But I think Ruthvik and Nick have the higher ceiling and the lower floor.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, on to number 3. And I think we both agreed this was probably the toughest spot to pick in the entire list.
Yeah, you could literally do a coin flip for 3 and 2. I feel like I've changed my mind on this. I feel like I was adamant towards picking one of the 2 teams for this spot, and now I'm like kind of mentally flip flopping. So I just like I don't know, but thankfully you get to go first. So
I get to go first. And at number 3, I am picking myself.
wow. Okay. Wow.
I am currently half a game behind Eric. I have not looked good in either of the past 2 weeks. My on base percentage is kind of tanked. I think it's looking iffy. I'm scared to play Eric. If Eric played me right now, I think he would beat me, and that's why I put him ahead of me.
Wow. I can't say I saw that coming.
Really?
I guess I wasn't too surprised because I guess if you listen to the podcast before this one, he did mention that Eric looked like the second best team right now. But I couldn't tell if that was a preview for your overall rankings or just how you felt about him at the moment. But wow, I thought you'd have a bit more confidence in your team. But I went back and forth on this, but I have been kind of steadfast in ranking these 2 teams this way the entire season. And I got to go with my gut. I don't really see a huge reason to change it. I have Eric at 3.
Hmm.
I and for me, it comes down to 2 things. Number one, I think your hitting is better than his hitting. And I get that Eric has a strategy that works for him. And I think he does this better than anybody else in the league of managing a roster on a day-to-day basis like that. And that gets him far. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to the quarterfinals, the semifinals, the finals, am I trusting Vlad and Soto and Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo, Francisco Lindor? I mean, Trent Grisham, like the list goes on and on of all these good hitters. You have Adam Frazier's been fantastic. Or am I going to trust, Jose Ramirez, Whit Merrifield, and kind of Wander Franco and whoever else Eric is kind of, throwing out. It's not to say I think he's a bad offense, but like, I think yours is better. I just think yours is a bit more star-studded and in a hypothetical match if I trust it more.
Wow.
But number 2, I think that you have the better constructed pitching staff than he does. I think there is a debate as to who has a better rotation between you two, especially with Eric adding Lynn and Greinke and Scherzer over the past few weeks, although losing Glass now to the injury really hurts. But I think what the difference is, it comes down to the bullpen. Eric's bullpen is non-existent. I'm going to pull up the stats here just to compare the number of saves and the number of holds, because I think that this is particularly important. I probably should have had this up beforehand, but here we go. You on the season have 31 saves. Eric has 4 saves. You on the season have 33 holds. Eric has actually improved in holds recently. I'll give him credit there with 31. And you see the difference in ERA and WHIP. You have a 3.29 ERA. He has a 3.53. And you have a 1.06 WHIP, which nearly leads the league. And he has a 1.11. And I think part of the reason for that difference in ERA and WHIP is the fact that you've had all these bullpen arms pitching. They traditionally get lower ERAs and WHIPs, and I just think that unless Eric can bring in a couple more, holds guys or saves guys to really be more consistent there, I see you out pitching him, especially because I think your rotations are all too different skills wise. So that was not number 2 in the ranking. That was my second reason for picking your team over his. So I guess my number 2 team is you, and I think I pretty much just explained why I picked you over him for number 2. So I'm not going to go into that. I'll let you talk about why you have Eric at number 2.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for all of the praise on my team. I had Eric number 2, kind of for the reasons I outlined. I'm scared to play him. He is currently tops in the league in 4 different categories. He has the most home runs, the most RBIs, the most steals, and the most strikeouts. And that strikeouts number, he has over 100 more than anyone else. So you're only leading in 3 categories, and I am leading in none, although I'm very close second in quite a few of them. So I think Eric just dominates in certain ways, and I think, I'm not sure the hitting strategy is something that he can, he's guaranteed to be able to pull off in a playoff matchup. But I really think this team is just, we're on a collision course with each other. The rivalry is absolutely, for the first half of the season, lived up to expectations from the offseason. Even if our individual matchup early in the season wasn't the most exciting. and it's really going to come down to the two of us to see who's going to reach the finals, and I would put money on him.
Damn. I mean, that is high praise for his team. And I think a lot of what you're saying makes sense. I just for me, it still comes down to whose players do I trust more in a hypothetical 1 week matchup, and I think it's still yours. And while I think, and no offense, I think Eric does a better job of managing the day-to-day kind of operations of a roster than you do, I don't think that it's to a significant degree where it's going to overcome some of the shortfalls I think he has both in his strategy and with his roster. So I had to pick you. And again, I think to your point on the Roto standings, we're not playing Roto this year. And while, it's funny because Eric last year was talking about how his team's not built for Roto, and it's for whatever reason built for Roto right now because he's winning all these categories. But I prefer to look at this more in a head-to-head, and for me, the saves and the holds are a big deal. Whereas, the maybe how whether he's first or second in a category doesn't matter as much to me.
All right, I guess we'll see what happens in September. But number one, to you, is there anything we need to say? You're
11-0. Yesterday when Cam and I were discussing this episode, when what we were gonna do, I told him, if I keep going on and on about my team, I want you to just tell me to shut up because otherwise we're gonna be here all night. So to prevent myself from doing that, I really have nothing to add that I haven't said in prior podcasts. I mean, my team's just dominating right now. I've beaten everybody. I'm 11-0. And I think that you and Eric are going to be very tough opponents in the playoffs, and I'm not taking anything for granted. But I'm feeling very good about my chances of repeating for a title at the moment, with the way my roster's constructed. And I will say I got Springer and Muncy back today, so for the first time all year I have a fully healthy set of bats, so that's going to be a lot of fun. But I will spare you all from listening to me brag about how awesome I think my team is.
Yep, we do know your team is awesome. And yeah, so those are our power rankings. Feel free to bombard us in the Slack if you disagree with where your team is ranked, or if you think you're ranked way too highly, you can kindly tell us why you're wrong. And yeah, was that all we had for today? Do we have an underwater
before
update?
we go, I think it was interesting that we pretty much had a consensus in the top six after not really having a consensus in the bottom six, with the exception of you putting yourself at 3 and me putting you at 2.
Yeah, I mean, it is a little weird. I guess the top of the standings, maybe it's because we talk more about those teams and our thoughts are kind of becoming more one and the same, whereas the teams in the bottom we talk about less on the podcast.
Yeah, I think it's probably partially it.
Although the team we talk the most about on the podcast is EBO, and we didn't have the same spot for them.
Yeah, I mean, EBO is just such an interesting situation for so many reasons this year that I feel like they're worth talking about. But I've always had the suspicion when we talk about them that we rank them a little differently. And I didn't think that was necessarily going to change. But man, this is very different from our offseason rankings too. I think we had a lot more consensus in the offseason than we do now.
I think we did, and neither of us had Andrew last, unlike the offseason.
Yeah, no, that I think pretty much at the bottom we had close to a consensus. And when we did this over the winter, but not now. We only had 4 teams in the same spot. 1, 4, 5, and 6. And I actually changed my ranking of 4 through 6 at the last minute. I almost had Connor and Ruthvik and Nick flipped, which means we would have only had 1 and 4 the same. But I guess I decided to reverse that at the last second. But very, very interesting overall, and always fun to do these power rankings. Always fun to briefly interrupt the power rankings by talking about Malik Smith. I feel like that's what brings the charm to the league. But yeah, anything else you want to say before we sign off here? I'm now down 0-10 to 2. So let's see if I can come back after this podcast drops, but it's not looking great right now.
That could be a big matchup. And yeah, until next time, hopefully we don't have to make another one for you by next week.
Yeah, please just I love all the trades. I love all the retirements, or I don't love the retirements, but I love all the trades and stuff. But Cam and I can't keep recording 20 podcasts a week. So let's make sure we can have enough just for one podcast next time. But if there's more, we will happily cover all of it in whatever way we need to feel like we've adequately covered it. So yeah.
All right. Yeah. Take care, everyone.
Yep.
I don't care what I've been told. This police state is much too cold. Cut from crooked cloth and more. This police state is much too old. Puppets erect with battery set. They charge for a while. Fall right in, rank and file, and when they forget the week of the chance.
This podcast is good.